Number 10. Hair straightening gone wrong. In Brazil, a 14-year-old girl was killed while using a hair straightener. Her name was Tamires de Conceição Silva, and she died instantly the moment her wet hair touched an exposed wire on the hair straightener. She was at her home in the northeast of the country, in the town in Setio Tubarão, where this unthinkable tragedy took place. Even though her family called emergency services right away, there was nothing they could do. The hair straightener had a wire sticking out, which delivered an unbelievable electric shock when it touched her wet hair. Who would have ever thought that just trying to straighten your hair could have deadly consequences? But believe it or not, this was not the only electrical fatality in Brazil in recent days. Just a month before this poor teenager was killed, yet another teenage girl died in Brazil from being electrocuted. This girl was named Raja Ferreira de Oliveira, and she was charging her cell phone when her house was struck by lightning. The lightning somehow went through her house, up the electric cable of her phone, and straight into her brain. Just like the other poor girl, she died immediately. The family performed first aid and drove her to the hospital, but by the time she was handed over to the paramedics, she had already been dead for quite some time. Number 9. Exploded on a train. Oleg Horoshev is the boy who exploded while trying to show off to his girlfriend. He literally blew himself up after he climbed onto the top of a train and got an electric shock from one of the cables. The cable sent 27,500 volts straight into the kid's body, causing him to burst like an overfilled balloon. The young boy was spotted walking beside the railway in the small town in Karasuk, Russia, just moments before the terrifying incident occurred. Apparently, he climbed onto the top of the train because he wanted to take pictures to impress his girlfriend, but absolutely nobody was impressed by what happened. Someone even caught the aftermath on video, with the exploded boy lying beside the carriage of the train, withering and crying, and in shock. A female witness told police that Oleg was with a small group of boys and girls, and that another boy was planning to follow Oleg onto the train, but before he could, there was a loud boom. Everyone looked up to see a black mark on Oleg's chest, just seconds before his whole body was on fire. To make matters even worse for the child, he spent 3 days suffering in the hospital as doctors tried to save his life, but there was nothing they can do. He had burns across most of his body. The electricity had fried him from the inside. Number 8. Charging the phone in the bath. A 24-year-old shop worker died after receiving a massive electric shock while charging her iPhone. Yet again, this terrifying incident happened in Russia, in the city of Arkhangelsk. The girl was Olesia Semenova, and she was discovered by her roommate floating dead in the bathtub. According to what the friend told the emergency operator when she called the police, Olesia was pale, she wasn't breathing, and she showed no sign of life. Plus, when she reached out to touch her friend, she received an electric shock. She also noted that there was a smartphone in the water connected to a cable. Paramedics later confirmed what the friend had assumed. The poor girl had been taking a bath and charging her iPhone beside the tub when the phone accidentally fell into the water and killed her. Even though a cell phone might not seem that deadly, it's still hooked to electricity when it's charging. It's the same as tossing a toaster into the bath. After the devastating incident, the Russian Emergencies Ministry issued a public warning to all citizens to keep electrical appliances away from the water. Hopefully, people will listen. Number 7. Leopard on the power lines. In one of the strangest cases of electricity gone wrong, a leopard was electrocuted in India and discovered hanging from an electric pole. The wild cat had somehow managed to get all the way to the top of the electric pole and then get tangled up in the lines. People couldn't believe it when they saw the dead body of a cat hanging limp from the wires. The incident happened near the Malaram forest, a very remote part of the country in which leopards sometimes stray into human habitations. But seeing as wild animals don't quite understand how to navigate human constructs, the leopard probably thought the electric pole was a tree when it tried to climb to the top and ended up getting zapped and killed. According to the local wildlife officials who investigated the case, the leopard had probably come into town in search of food. Since these are ambush predators, the leopard was trying to find a high vantage point where it could spot incoming prey and leap. This is what ultimately led to the deadly electrocution. Officials had to come down and disconnect the power supply just to remove the carcass, which was then handed over to a vet for an autopsy before the body was burned. Number 6. Trying to save a pigeon. In another weird electricity incident, also in India and also involving some power lines, a man was killed trying to save the life of a pigeon. The 35-year-old man was terrified when he saw a pigeon tangled up in some power lines in the small village of Malpur, near the local market. Purely out of the kindness of his heart, he then climbed up the electric pole to try and free it. Others watching this incredible rescue attempt couldn't believe the man's bravery. After all, he was the only one willing to do anything about the pigeon as it squirmed in pain above their heads. But unfortunately for him, freeing the bird didn't go quite as planned. The hero's name was Leroy Michener, a father to 3 children. He tied a wooden stick to an iron rod and hauled himself up the electric pole. When he tried to detangle the bird from the wires using the stick, he accidentally poked one of them. Keep in mind, folks, that wood can still conduct electricity. The live wire sent voltage through the wood stick, down the metal rod, and directly into the man. He fell from the electric pole, hit the ground, and landed on his skull. He was dead before the ambulance even arrived. He left behind his family and his life, and all for the sake of a suffering pigeon. We don't know if it was the electricity that killed him or the fall that broke his skull, but either way, the pigeon also died. This was not a great day for anybody. Would you ever risk your life to save a pigeon or some other animal? Let us know how you feel in the comments, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 5. Painting fail. A man painting a tower in the Mahoning Township of Pennsylvania ended his shift with a bang. At 27 years old, this guy died trying to paint the power line tower. And if that seems like a pretty silly thing to paint, you're not the only one who thinks that. According to the coroner from Lawrence County, the individual was from Mexico, but his name had not been revealed for privacy reasons. The incident went down at about 11 o'clock in the morning, with the man's daily duty being to repaint the tower. He was contracted by Penn Power to revamp the old structure, and everything was going fine until he climbed to the top and accidentally came in contact with the live electric wires. And to make matters even grislier, he didn't just get electrocuted, he also got tangled up in the wires. By the time help arrived, he was hanging unconscious from his harness, dangled up in live electric wires, 75 feet above the ground. It took the rescuers quite some time to remove the corpse because of how dangerous it was. Paramedics were standing by, but it was a pretty futile gesture. By the time his body was handed over to them, he was already dead. And while you may be wondering why this guy was working by himself in such a dangerous area, he wasn't. A coworker was there when it happened. He claimed sparks were literally flying off his body, and it was too dangerous for him to help. Number 4. Giraffes and power lines. In Kenya, a trio of giraffes sadly walked into the same low-hanging power lines and got electrocuted. The terrible event happened back in February in the Soisambu Conservancy. After the incident, photos of the 3 dead giraffes were posted online, sparking outrage from both Kenyan citizens and conservationists worldwide. They demanded that the power company responsible for the electrical infrastructure be held accountable. If they had known giraffes lived in the region, which obviously they must have, it was totally negligent for them to have power lines so low that the unknowing tall animals could walk straight into them. It's no secret how big giraffes are, and if there are power lines around, they should clearly be tall enough to avoid any incident like this. And to make matters even worse, these weren't any ordinary giraffes. They were Rothschild's giraffes, a rare subspecies that primarily live in protected areas throughout Kenya and Uganda. This particular conservancy area is home to 124 of them, with only about 600 of them left in the country. That's half the population worldwide. If they keep on walking into power lines, they probably won't be around much longer. This is a species that had been endangered until 2010 because of things like illegal hunting, habitat destruction, and human interference. Instead of preserving them, Kenya seems to be killing them. According to Jackson K. Kinyanjui, an environmental researcher with the nonprofit organization Climate Change Kenya, at least 11 of these giraffes have been killed since 2019, almost all because of similar incidents, just like this one. Number 3. Reaching for kittens. Tragedy struck Texas just recently when a 10-year-old girl was electrocuted to death trying to reach for some kittens. The poor girl had reached behind a dryer in search of the newly born kittens when the accident occurred. The new Boston police chief, Gary McRae, told local news that officers have yet to identify what exactly caused the electrocution, though it's safe to say she must have touched an exposed wire. The kittens were like her babies, and they had gotten stuck behind the dryer. She simply wanted to reach back there and grab them, but this totally ordinary act ended up costing the young girl her life. As you can undoubtedly imagine, the family is torn to pieces. Shelby Roos, the girl's mother, said she loved the kittens and would have done anything for them, and also that her daughter had more compassion for living animals at the young age of 10 than most people have at any point in their entire life. This tragedy really shows not just how dangerous electricity can be, but how something completely ordinary can take life away in a split second. Number 2. Mommy gets zapped. A 4-year-old boy was terribly traumatized when he discovered his mother dead in the bath after she was electrocuted by her smartphone. This young child rushed into the bathroom after he heard a loud bang, only to find his mom, 25-year-old Anastasia Sherbanina, dead in the water. But this was no ordinary boy. the youngster was smart enough to quickly unplug the cable and try to resuscitate his mother. That's pretty bright for 4 years old, and most young kids would probably just have reached into the bath and also gotten electrocuted. He didn't know what to do. His mom showed no signs of life, and so he ran to the phone and called his great-grandmother. The great-grandmother then took a taxi to their home, where by now, the mom had been dead for almost an hour. Unfortunately, there was nothing anyone can do. Anastasia was dead, and the small town of Toguchin, Russia, was in shock. Since the incident, the young boy has gone to live with his great-grandmother, and to be completely honest, hopefully when he grows up, he has no memory of the horrifying incident. Just the year before, Anastasia's own mother died of cancer. The poor kid's whole life has been saturated in death, so hopefully he grows up to be a relatively normal person. And number 1, snakes in the electric box. Something very strange was discovered by workers with the Electric Services Department in North Carolina. These workers were sent to a house to disconnect its power, but when they opened the electrical box, they discovered dead snakes. One of the serpents had slithered across 2 hot terminals and was immediately shocked to death. But what makes the discovery so shocking, no pun intended, is that a second snake had discovered the first one's dead body and tried to eat it. When the second snake chomped into the first one, it was also electrocuted to death. Nobody ever found the snakes before because the home was abandoned and scheduled to be demolished, and so they had just kind of remained inside the electrical box like a pair of snake mummies. According to the director of the electric services, Brooks Kirby, this is actually something that the workers come across every now and again. The only difference is that normally it's just one fried snake, not a duo. Electricity is nothing to mess with. Number 9. Robert Lockhart. In 2016, 86-year-old Robert Lockhart felt that he needed to settle a score with his neighbor, Jennifer Lockhart, who is also his niece. He waited outside the 58-year-old woman's Marion County, Florida home, waiting for her to return. When she arrived, Lockhart fired 2 bullets into her. He also shot her dog. Sadly, the dog died. As Jennifer lay injured in the driveway, Lockhart returned to the scene after allegedly going home to reload his gun and tried to shoot her again. But the gun malfunctioned, so he just went home. When police came for him, he surrendered peacefully and was charged with attempted murder. At his first hearing, Detective Aaron Levy told the judge that Jennifer was afraid of her uncle and feared that he would come after her if he was released on bail. Levy also said that Lockhart shot his niece because he thought she had stolen a credit card from him and done something to his garage. Lockhart's bail was set at $250,000. He denied going home to reload his gun and said that he regretted shooting Jennifer and would like to see his niece and brother, whom he was banned from interacting with at the time. It's unclear how the case played out, but hopefully the family hired a professional to help them work through their dysfunction if they tried to reconcile at any point. Number 8. Charlotte Simpson. The police weren't just going to go away when the driver of a green minivan failed to pull over for officers 2 years ago in London, Kentucky. They followed the vehicle until it pulled into a driveway and found 2 female occupants, 32-year-old Rebecca Jean Foltz and her mother, 69-year-old Charlotte Simpson. Officers originally only meant to pull the van over for a simple traffic stop, but they quickly learned that the 2 women had outstanding bench warrants. Things quickly escalated when Rebecca refused to exit the vehicle, and they took a bizarre turn when Charlotte told the police that there was a baby in the van. But the child's safety seat was empty, and at first glance, there was no signs of the infant. Deputies rifled through the garbage-filled, insect-infested vehicle filled with bags of trash and clothing. They found a 16-day-old baby boy on the floor between the 2 front seats, with ants crawling all over him. He was dehydrated and was having trouble breathing, according to a Facebook post by the Laurel County Sheriff's Office, which also noted that the van had no air conditioning. A deputy drove the ambulance to the emergency room so that both paramedics on duty could tend to the ailing child. Police arrested Foltz and Simpson on a slew of charges, including first-degree criminal child abuse. In a jailhouse interview with WKYT, Foltz claimed that the officers exaggerated her son's condition, stating that he had just a few heat bumps on him, and she argued that she is a good mom, but she declined to explain why the baby was not in his car seat. Meanwhile, Simpson told interviewers that Rebecca was a good mother, but also didn't offer up an explanation for the condition the baby was found in. Number 7. Doris Payne. Doris Payne is a seasoned jewel thief and a con artist from West Virginia, whose track record spans most of her adult life and a big portion of the globe. For 60 years, she made a living by stealing luxury goods. Her life of crime began during the 1950s. Over the following decades, Payne used at least 20 aliases and 5 social security numbers to carry out her robberies and scams. During the 1970s, she allegedly stole a 10-carat diamond ring worth $500,000 in Monte Carlo. Payne fled to France, but was extradited back to Monte Carlo, where police held her for 9 months. They tried but failed to recover the ring and had no choice but to release the savvy shoplifter. Payne escaped federal custody at least once and had also been arrested in Greece, France, Britain, and Switzerland. Her crimes continued even as she entered her senior years, landing her in and out of prison and on probation numerous times. Judges have ordered her to stay away from jewelry stores, but she hasn't listened so far. In 2015, at the age of 85, she visited a jewelry store at a mall in Charlotte, North Carolina, and made off with a $33,000 ring. 2 years later, Payne stole $86 worth of merchandise from a Walmart while wearing an ankle monitoring bracelet for her previous arrest. A 2013 Netflix documentary called The Life and Crimes of Doris Payne detailed the woman's extensive rap sheet both in the US and abroad. In it, she claims to have stolen over $2 million worth of jewels, stating, "There's never been a day that I went to steal that I did not get what I went to do." Number 6. Michael Swanson. Earlier this year, police in Midwest City, Oklahoma, received a panic call from Jackie Roller. She said that a relative, 69-year-old Michael Swanson, had shot her 13-year-old grandson, Chris. When officers arrived, Swanson told them that he was either going to commit suicide or the police would have to kill him to get him because he wasn't going to go back to prison. He initially held the victims hostage inside the house, but eventually let them go. An hours-long standoff ensued. Tear gas was deployed, eventually managed to get Swanson out of the house. Chris told police that Swanson shot him after the two got into an argument. When his grandmother arrived home, Swanson reportedly told her that she might want to go talk to her grandson, stating, "You may want to go ask him how he is. I shot him." Swanson allegedly told Jackie that he wasn't done shooting Chris and that he was going to do it again in front of her. Then, he said he was going to kill the entire family. Thankfully, they were able to call the police and get to safety. The boy's aunt, Christina Slimmer, told local station KFOR that Swanson had started acting strange after moving in with the family, and that they suspected him of being on drugs. He was charged with shooting with intent to kill and for being a felon in possession of a firearm. Do you think this old man belongs in the loony bin or jail? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking the video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 5. Grandpa Woodstock. A man named Grandpa Woodstock has been a fixture of the town of Woodstock in Ulster County, New York, since the 1990s. With long hair, a gray beard, and wizard-like clothing, he's impossible to miss. He's known for riding around on his adult-sized tricycle and standing barefoot while flashing peace signs at cars and honking a bicycle horn attached to a wooden staff. The man's real name is Alan M. Richardson. The New York Times described the eccentric character as one of the last remaining holdouts of the town's dwindling hippie community. Grandpa Woodstock told the New York Times that he moved there to recapture the feel of the 1969 music festival. For a long time, he lived with Grandma Woodstock, a woman 20 years older than him and equally as eccentric. The couple's peaceful existence was interrupted in 2014 when police charged the 70-year-old hippie icon with selling marijuana and other drugs. He had fallen under the investigation after numerous locals complained about him selling to teens, and undercover agents made several controlled buys leading up to the arrest. Grandpa Woodstock pleaded guilty to misdemeanor charges and received 3 years probation. Much to his dismay, he had to submit to weekly drug tests. He was also banned from seeing Grandma Woodstock, and the couple went their separate ways. Richardson defended his actions, claiming that he only sold pot to teens whose parents knew they were buying it and trusted him as a safe source. But attitudes towards marijuana are becoming more favorable in the state of New York, where recreational use was legalized this year. Based on the change, Grandpa Woodstock could possibly fight to get his conviction overturned. Number 4. Leroy Michener. Earlier this year, authorities in Raleigh, North Carolina, arrested 75-year-old Leroy Michener for allegedly shooting and injuring someone in the middle of the street. Thankfully, the victim survived. Mr. Michener was charged with assault with a dangerous weapon, inflicting serious injury. Articles about his arrest don't divulge many details, but it's safe to say that things could have turned out much worse for the senior citizen if his victim had died. And for some elderly people, it has. Take, for example, 86-year-old Thomas Hatchett of Manchester, New Jersey, who fatally shot his 71-year-old landlord, Igil Haddad, in 2019. Police found Hatchett's victim lying face down in the street, with blood pouring from bullet wounds to his head and back. They connected Hatchett to the crime scene and apprehended him. He reportedly admitted to planning the murder and waiting outside Haddad's residence in anticipation of carrying out the sinister crime. Hatchett rejected a plea deal and pleaded guilty to murder. He received a 10-year prison sentence. Considering his age, that means he'll most likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. Number 3. Linda Kennison. A 58-year-old grandmother from Connecticut named Linda Kennison made headlines on Thanksgiving this year when she was arrested in connection with the death of her 6-week-old grandson. Just days earlier, her daughter Crystal had dialed 911 and reported that her baby was pale and that there was stuff coming out of his nose, but that he was breathing lightly. He was rushed to the hospital, where he died a few days later. A post-mortem examination found no clear signs of abuse. Kennison told investigators that she and Crystal had found the baby in his distressed state after placing him in a bassinet, but the woman's stories didn't add up, so detectives pushed harder for information, hoping one of them would crack. Crystal allegedly admitted that she had smothered the boy for 20 minutes until he stopped moving because she was stressed out about life. She already had one child to take care of and didn't feel like she could handle another. When her son became still, she reportedly put him in a swing and simply carried on with her day. Kennison, who was at the home that day, admitted that she knew the baby wasn't breathing, but claimed that she had no idea Crystal had hurt him. They tried putting food in the child's mouth to make it look like he was alive and well, but it didn't work. When the deranged mother-daughter duo finally decided to call 911, Kennison allegedly told Crystal to lie to the police to avoid losing custody of her other child. During the call, she followed her mother's advice and claimed that the baby was breathing lightly, but this clearly wasn't the case according to prosecutors. Police charged Crystal with first-degree murder, and Kennison was charged with risking injury to a child. Number 2. Judith Black. Judith Black of Pine Ridge, Florida, became the latest viral Karen in May of this year when she allegedly hurled racist slurs at a Burger King employee. She also threw her Whopper at her because she disapproved of the thickness of the sandwich sliced tomatoes. She then fled the scene. Police were called to the restaurant, where the employee accused the 77-year-old of using several racist names against her, both before and after whipping the Whopper at her. Witnesses confirmed the worker's claims, and surveillance footage proved that Judith did indeed throw the sandwich. When police caught up with her, she reportedly admitted to throwing the Whopper and using racial slurs. She was charged with battery, which would have normally been a misdemeanor, but Judith's bigoted remarks earned her an upgrade to a felony charge. The senior citizen was released on $2,500 bail. If convicted, she could face up to 5 years in prison. And number 1, Edie Sims. Edie Sims stayed out of trouble her entire life, and she always wondered what it was like to be arrested. She finally found out in 2016 when officers picked her up at her home in St. Louis County, Missouri, and put her in the back of a squad car. They even handcuffed her at her request because she had never had the pleasure of being cuffed before. Instead of actually arresting Edie, the police department arranged to drive her to a local senior center with her knitted goods. Over the previous 2 years, she had crafted over 400 of the handmade items for the senior citizens there, including lamp robes, scarves, pot holders, eyeglass cases, and walker bags. But she had never delivered her creations in person until the day the cops showed up for her. Whenever local station KTVI asked Edie if she enjoyed her ride, she said, "Oh yes, handcuffs and all." She added a few words of wisdom about the importance of doing community service and how it enables you to help people who may not have received it otherwise. Most of us would like to forget any run-ins we may have had with the law, and the community tends to look down on someone for these types of encounters. But this is one close call with the law that many will count as a good memory.
Alabama murder. A man from Alabama has been charged with murdering his wife. His wife happened to be an exhibitionist who posted lewd photos on the internet. Not only does the alleged killer claim his innocence, but his lawyer recently said that he's heartbroken over the death of his wife. This is William Jeffrey West, charged with killing Kathleen Dawn West. As of right now, his lawyer is trying desperately to get him free of the charges, even though from the outside looking in, he definitely looks like the killer. The prosecution is accusing William of using a liquor bottle to beat his wife to death after they got into a domestic argument. Kathleen was found dead and partly naked on the street in front of their home, about 35 miles from Birmingham. The motivation behind the killing has to do with William's dead wife's exhibitionism and online nudity. She not only posted risque photographs on social media, but was also part of a paid site where people could send her money to see even more. William knew about what she was doing, and it made him furious with jealousy. Even though we don't know exactly what the pair were fighting about the night Kathleen was bludgeoned to death with a liquor bottle, we can make a pretty good guess. Seeing as she was partly naked, it could have had something to do with William walking in on a home photo shoot and losing his marbles. 9. Wife on fire. Carl Carlson, that's Carl Carlson with K's instead of C's, was awarded millions of dollars in insurance after his wife perished in a house fire. Carl also had a son who was killed while repairing a vehicle in a tragic accident. So much death surrounded Carl Carlson that it seemed a little suspicious. And when his second wife, Cindy, discovered an insurance policy that he had taken out in her name, she was immediately terrified for her life. The fire that claimed his first wife, named Christina, was on New Year's Day 1991. Carl and his family were living in Murphy's, California, when the fire broke out. He managed to save all 3 of his children except his wife. She was trapped in the bathroom and the window had been boarded up so she couldn't break through it. He claimed that his wife had accidentally broken the window several days before, which was why it had been boarded up. Incidentally, she had also left a jug of kerosene in the hallway outside the bathroom because she thought it was water. This bucket was knocked over, a faulty electric light ignited the fluid, and Carl walked away with a boatload of cash. That boatload of cash was from the insurance policy that he had taken out literally 20 days before the fire started. In 2008, Carl's son Levi died while doing his dad a favor. He was trying to repair his father's old Chevy pickup truck when the jack broke and the truck crushed Levi to death. Amazingly, his father walked away with over $700,000 in insurance money. Cindy, his second wife, later found out that Carl had an insurance policy worth $1.2 million taken out in her name. She then went to the police, agreed to have a recording device attached to her, and she squeezed the truth out of Carl about the murders. He admitted that he killed his own wife and killed his own son, and he was sentenced to life in prison in 2013. 8. Heroin serial. A man in Michigan got creative when he tried to murder his wife the worst possible way. Jason Thomas Harris has been charged and convicted for premeditated murder in the death of Christina Ann Thompson Harrison in 2014. He killed her by lacing a bowl of cereal with a lethal dose of heroin. Believe it or not, the breast milk of the victim played a major role in solving the case. This is because her death was originally ruled an accidental overdose. After all, she technically died from a heroin OD, but investigators were suspicious because she wasn't a drug user. There was nothing at all to suggest she would have ever gone out of her way to do heroin. Thankfully, she had bottles of breast milk in the fridge that she was using to feed her infant. The police were able to test those bottles of milk to confirm that she had not previously had any drugs in her system. This means that on the morning of her death, it was the first time she ever did heroin. Things just didn't line up. To make matters worse, Jason Harris received $120,000 from her life insurance payout. He was also busted texting several other women during the months before the death. One of those women even moved into his house just 2 weeks after his wife died. In the end, Jason Harris was 100% guilty. Even his siblings came forward to tell the police that he had confided in them that he wanted to get rid of his wife. 7. The Big Reveal. In Singapore, a man stole the cell phone belonging to his estranged wife because he was suspicious that she was having an affair. What he discovered were compromising photographs as well as video recordings. What did he do with these videos and photographs? He posted them on Facebook for everyone to see. According to him, he didn't want others to share his same fate by being cheated on by this woman. He was correct in his assumption that she was having an affair. it was with her work supervisor. In the compromising videos, both his wife and the shady supervisor were clearly visible. The husband accused the supervisor of being a homewrecker. He included his name and his occupation in the Facebook upload. And because the incident went viral, he basically ruined this guy's life. But he got into some trouble as well. He has pleaded guilty to one count of distributing intimate images as well as stealing his wife's phone. But at the end of the day, at least he doesn't have naked pictures floating around on the internet for all his friends and coworkers to see. Who do you think is the victim in this case? Was the husband in the wrong for distributing the intimate photographs, or was his wife the villain for doing what she did in the first place? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe before the end of the video. 6. The last call. A man from Southern California has been arrested on suspicion of killing his wife earlier this year. Leroy Michener was charged by San Diego County prosecutors with murder and illegal possession of a weapon. He should be facing a sentence of life in prison when he gets convicted of killing his wife, Maya Michener. But according to what his attorney told local news, the charges are a bit of a surprise because the police don't actually have any evidence that Maya is dead. Larry's lawyer says Larry believes Maya is still very much alive. But according to District Attorney Summer Stephan, prosecutors can still file a murder charge even if they don't have a body. Maya vanished in January, leaving her cell phone and all her other valuables, as well as all 3 of her children. Larry told the police that she left voluntarily, but investigators considered him a person of interest immediately. Even if she had abandoned her kids and Larry, she would have taken her phone with her, right? It quickly came out that the pair had been in a toxic relationship, and that the last call Maya ever made was on January 7th to a divorce attorney. It also came out that Larry had hired magicians to cast spells to incapacitate Maya. He wanted her crippled so that she would be forced to stay at home. He clearly had homicidal intentions. Even though the police can't find the body, there's no doubt in their minds that he's the killer. Number 5. Revenge in North Carolina. In North Carolina, Robert Kevin Howard became suspicious of his wife in December of 2016. He thought for sure that she was having an affair. As it turned out, he was correct. He learned that she and another man were having a secret rendezvous. When he confronted his wife about it, she broke down and admitted that she was a cheater and that she wanted a divorce. Well, the husband didn't take the betrayal sitting down. He filed a lawsuit against the man who was sleeping with his wife under North Carolina's alienation of affection law. This law allows you to sue an individual if they purposely interfere with your marriage. The man who did indeed interfere with Robert's marriage had even gone to his house and ate dinner, sharing personal stories. Robert thought they were all just friends, but that didn't turn out to be the case. A judge ended up ruling in his favor, awarding Robert Howard with $750,000 to be paid by the scumbag who messed around with his wife. 4. The Heartbreaker. In Upper Arlington, Ohio, a man has gotten in some serious trouble for stealing women's hearts, then robbing them of their money. He wasn't actually married to anyone, but his story is still worth hearing simply because of how shocking it is. He victimized multiple women across several states. Because he traveled for work, it was easy for him to lead multiple lives. He would meet a woman, make her fall in love with him, and then leave them broke. His name is Matthew Paulson, and one of his victims has given the intimate details about how he conned her. He told the woman that he had recently relocated for a new job that paid extremely well. He took her out for dinners, he booked trips for them to go on together, and even showed her a condo that he was allegedly about to buy. The couple were supposed to go on a trip, but before they arrived at the airport, Matthew Paulson abandoned the city with all of her luggage, her laptop, and her jewelry. She wasn't the only one either. Matthew convinced a different woman to sell her house and buy a new one together with him. But as the house was closing, he tried to siphon about $700,000 into his own bank account. He also opened up credit cards in her name and had been trying to steal her identity. Matthew Paulson is now facing charges in South Carolina, Illinois, Ohio, Texas, and Georgia. Last we heard, he's being held in a Georgia jail without bond, awaiting extradition to Texas. 3. Still at large. Savannah Pascal was murdered by her husband in La Marque, Texas. It happened on October 21, 2020. Trent Von Pascal waited for Savannah in the bathroom of their home and then shot her dead. He then went to a car dealership and stole a Chevy Tahoe at knife point before driving away and disappearing. At the time of this video, it's winter 2021 and the authorities still haven't found Trent. This guy shot his wife, robbed a car dealership with a knife, and the police still can't track him down. They have no idea where he is. But just listen to some more details around the terrifying death of his wife. Before he shot her, he posted a video on YouTube saying that he had warned her not to mess around with him and not to play with his emotions. Then after he shot her, he uploaded another video on YouTube apologizing to his children for killing his wife. 2. The Death Bus. The death of Emily Ferlazzo is one of the most brutal things to have happened in 2021. She was only 22 years old when the police received a report that she was missing. The New Hampshire woman was then discovered dead inside a bus in St. Albans. The bus had been converted into a traveling space by her and her husband, a kind of van living situation so that they could travel and explore the U.S. But dreams of adventure and exploration turned to horror when Emily and her husband, Joseph Ferlazzo, got into an argument and he killed her inside the bus. It was actually Joseph who turned himself into the Vermont State Police. He told detectives that he killed his wife and couldn't take the guilt anymore. When the police found her corpse in the bus, Joseph's account of what happened was confirmed. But in a shocking twist, Joseph has now pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder, despite the fact that he literally confessed to the police. As for how he killed her, Joseph did it with a gun. He had gotten so mad about whatever they argued about that he shot her twice in the head and then tried to cut apart her body to get rid of the evidence. But before he could, he gave up and left her mutilated corpse inside the bus. 1. Off the edge. A man from Colorado has been sentenced to life in prison. The crime was pushing his wife off the edge of a cliff. And yes, he did it on purpose. But guess what? This was his second wife that got shoved off the cliff. His first wife also died in a bizarre accident when she was crushed by a car jack in 1995. The wife's killer's name is Harold Hinthorn, and he told the judge that he is absolutely innocent of pushing his wife off a cliff with the intention of murdering her in 2012. But that didn't stop the judge from sentencing him to life. His wife, Toni Hinthorn, fell 130 feet down the side of a mountain while the couple were hiking in Rocky Mountain National Park. Harold was hoping to collect the $4.5 million life insurance policy that he had taken out on her. It was a total scam. The nail in his coffin, the one thing that really convinced prosecutors that he was guilty, is the fact that his first wife, Sandra Lynn, may also have been murdered. For some bizarre reason, Harold had her change a flat tire, and then the jack just, accidentally slipped, and she was crushed by the vehicle. Police are pretty sure the first wife was also killed, which means they should be looking to prosecute him for that murder as well. Thanks for watching. Which of these awful husbands do you think is by far the worst? I know it's a tough decision, but let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos like these. See you next time. Bye.